What's going on, everyone? It's LJ. I'm here, you're there, and it's time for a rock and metal update! So another month flies by, and here's another baker's dozen. Another stack of wax that has either been sitting in the inbox forever or has just come through the door. All of them have found their way on the turntable in the last month, and I can't wait to chat about them. And we're going to start right off with one that is an absolute grail, an album I absolutely love. From 1991, here is Sepultura's Arise. This is an original Holling pressing, and one that I was holding out for forever. It was reissued a couple of years back. Even that one can be tricky to find. But that's a 2 LP set, and I really wanted to hold out for a dead mint original. And one finally turned up. This was my second Sepultura album, and it was the first one that I bought brand new when it was released in 1991. Arise is the absolute summit, the very peak of Sepultura's wild and rapid ascent. Haunting, well-placed effects. And this one's got a slight shift in sound to include maybe a bit more groove. You've got solos from Andreas that are melodic but vicious. You've got Max Cavalera's unique vocals that could never be replaced. Igor's insane rhythm. Just one perfectly punishing track after another. To this day, Arise stands hand in hand with Beneath the Remains as my absolute favorite Sepultura album. And in my personal opinion, they never ever did better than this. Let's move from 1991 back to 1985, and let's move from Brazil to Canada with the first album by Sacrifice, Torment and Fire. This was the debut from Canada's thrash metal masters. I love you, Voivod, but I just love Sacrifice more. This was originally released on Metal Blade in the US, and it fit that label at the time perfectly. Raw, unrefined, bashing, thrashing, and throwing furniture in every possible direction. Shredding vocals in twin leads. Forget the rhyming dictionary, it's just not that kind of record. This is Canada's entry in the game that was being played at the time by Onslaught, Possessed, Creator, Slayer, and even Sodom to some degree. The production here is exactly what you'd expect, and it's what I love about it. No punches pulled, no one left unbruised. They were far more refined by 1987's follow-up, Forward to Termination, which I showed a video or two back, and even more so by the third album in 1990, Soldiers of Misfortune. But this one, vicious, raw, and it just checks every single box on what made a mid-80s thrash debut so damn fantastic. You know, I often get asked, do you buy an album that you don't like? I absolutely do, but I totally get the ones that are shown in the videos. They're the ones that just really work, that I'm excited about. But here's a good example of when it doesn't exactly go that way. From 1989, here's Alex Massey's Attack of the Neon Shark. What a title. Only in the 80s. Stick this one in the Guitar Hero section of your collection with your Marty Friedman, Steve Vai, and Jason Becker solo albums. You know, it's unfortunate too, because after a killer start with the first track on side 1 called Under Fire, which is the only track with vocals on the whole album from Jeff Scott Soto of Yngwie Malmsteen fame, the next 35 minutes are just full out, look what I can do, fretboard fireworks. Now, it's mostly heavy, but there's some jazzy and progressive elements here and there as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Alex isn't obviously wickedly talented. The man can do things with a guitar that I could only dream of doing. But man, this just isn't my thing. And after about 5 minutes, it just gets unbelievably repetitive and boring. Now, from 2010, here's a new wave of traditional heavy metal album that I've had on the shelf for probably close to 2 years, and if memory serves, I've just never shown it. And it is the debut from Borrowed Time, Arcane Metal Arts. This is the 2010 demo. This combines the occult and early 80s style metal. It's 2 pounding, dark but heavy tracks, 1 quick acoustic fluke, not sure whose idea that was, and a ripping cover of Manila Road's Necropolis. What a great song. Now, unfortunately, they've split up after releasing only one excellent self-titled full-length album in 2013, which I can't suggest or recommend highly enough. It's fantastic. Side 2 whips up a couple raw live tracks from 2013. Sound isn't all that perfect, but there's 2 more soundboard quality live cuts from 2012 when Borrowed Time was opening for Manila Road. And speaking of, since we already talked about a cover of Necropolis, and now there's 2 live tracks from when they opened for Manila Road, that is probably the most fair and honest parallel that I can draw to this band in terms of their sound and their influence. Absolutely fantastic. From 2014, here is Inked in Blood from Obituary. You know, man, the second and third Obituary albums, Slowly We Rot and Cause of Death, from the early 90s, instant classics. Bought them when they were released, played them daily, but by 1994, I've mentioned a million times in the past, death metal and I divorced. We agreed to disagree. I waved bye-bye to Obituary. Now, fast forward 2 decades, and with no intention of ever revisiting them, a sound clip of this album caught my ear, and it triggered this Rambo-like flashback.
I'm coming to get you.
And I had to have it. I couldn't have been more shocked. This is jacked end to end with that classic Obituary sound, those classic Obituary solos. 0 redundant, never-ending blast beats. Thankfully, those are not here. And that trademark Obituary crawl, the way they work through a song. Back to bloodied front. Track after death-laced track, this album blew me back in my chair. Better late than never, and sporting some killer packaging to boot with a textured embossed cover, this one is simply not to be missed, and I am so glad I picked it up. Now, there was no getting around the next 2. From 1987 and 1988, here is Death's Scream Bloody Gore and Leprosy. 2 long overdue and 2 perfectly executed reissues from my brush with death metal in the early 90s. Everything about both of these albums is simply perfect. Where to even begin? The raw edge of Scream Bloody Gore, the more polished production of Leprosy, the riff that kickstarts Evil Dead, the one that drives Zombie Ritual on Scream Bloody Gore, the epic track, the death classic Pull the Plug from Leprosy, the vocals, the song structures, the artwork, the vision, a new genre being born at the time as we watch, and 2 albums that continue to inspire those that are smart enough to admire the fire that they lit that continues to burn and influence today. These 2 albums have been absent on vinyl for far too long, with originals commanding ridiculous prices. These reissues not only look absolutely brilliant, but they sound amazing. They're affordable, they're easy to put your hands on, and they are just absolute both genre-defining classics. Now, this one probably came in 6 or 8 months ago, and it's an album that took me a while to track down for a reasonable price. From 2008, it is a self-titled debut from In Solitude. Man, I love this record. Another entry from Sweden in the quest for new wave of traditional heavy metal gold. Early Merciful Fate influences worn proudly on their sleeve, laced throughout the album. Amazing mid-range vocals, melodic but heavy and great songs. No need to try to copy King Diamond here, just a lacing of those influences from early Fate, dark lyrics, traditional metal solos, just a freaking fantastic record. They made 2 more after this, and unfortunately they split up. And as they kind of went on, if you have or if you pick up the second album that follows, you'll notice they start kind of going more for a goth thing and coming away from this sound. And by the third album, I believe it's called Sister, they're more full 80s goth rock at that point. And while both of those albums are fantastic, it's this one that stands almost as an homage to the Merciful Fate. And it's one that is truly worthy of saying so. Absolutely excellent record. Time to kick the vocals up an octave if you can. I can't. But from 1987, here is Agent Steel's Unstoppable Force. This is the last in line of 3 classic back-to-back releases. unstoppable force, kind of, if you're familiar with Agent Steel, it tones down the ear-shattering speed metal brilliance of the debut, Skeptic Apocalypse, for a more US power metal approach. And the result, and this is a High Roller reissue, is it's a monster of a swan song. Blistering solos, big, huge, fat bottom-ended production. And, I mean, come on, John Cyrus's Jeff Tate-inspired vocals all come together to create this hellish, metal-spewing, speaker-melting inferno. Not a weak track to be found. This is the Rager, and he's coming to town. Now, the next 4 that we're going to take a look at are 4 that have been here for 2 to 3 years, sitting in the inbox. They got spun when they got here, and they've come out every now and then, but they've not really been played religiously enough to get up and want to talk about them. Now, the first, from 1989, here is the debut from Wolfsbane, and this one's a gold stamp promo. A full-length album from the future ill-fated frontman of Iron Maiden, Blaze Bayley. Now, beyond Blaze, what really stands out here, and it takes a minute to adjust to Blaze, to be completely honest, even out of an Iron Maiden setting, what stands out here is Jace Edwards' lead. Whoa! Just think of a UK Eddie Van Halen. And to that extent, I had heard this way back when, but I just had no recollection of it when it popped up on vinyl. Now, to cook up your own batch of Wolfsbane, you'd want to add a pinch of heavy metal, 2 cups of mid-80s Motley Crue and AC/DC, 3 tablespoons of David Lee Roth era Van Halen, leather and denim to taste, blend, chill if desired, pour and enjoy. Definitely not what I expected, definitely not what I remembered, and definitely not what the cover would lead you to believe, but an absolutely fantastic record. Here's an album I've not heard in a long time. From 1984, this is Battleax, Power from the Universe. This is a first French pressing on Music for Nations, and it's the second album from Battleax. This one is kind of a change in direction and caught me a little bit off guard. I just didn't remember hearing it. From the first album, which had a real new wave of British heavy metal vibe, it was the 83 debut Burn This Town. This is more of a traditional, better produced, but no less excellent or loud approach. Tight, solid, shout-along choruses, those types of tracks, driven with an accept balls-to-the-wall type vibe and intensity. This is the kind of album that just sounds better the louder you play it. The more you crank that knob to the right, the better it responds and the better it sits. From 1988, here's Attackers, The Second Coming. Think Liege Lord, think Hellstar, think Vicious Rumors, Fate's Warning, Omen, Attacker, all in that same vein. This is the second release and the first with a new vocalist, John Leone. John's vocals pierce your eardrums like a samurai sword. This was released on a little-known label called Mercenary Records, whose label looks very similar to the background here, Green Camouflage, which I think Combat also did that back in the day. Unfortunately, because it was on a little label with little financial backing, it was just doomed to obscurity. And as a result, Attacker and this record remain wildly underrated, and they're rarely ever mentioned. This is 30 minutes, flat out of the gate, and not a wasted second of punishing metal assault. From 1989, it's time to wrap this up with Princess Pang. This is female-fronted, almost sleaze metal, but just a bit too clean. So the more I spin it, the more I figure, let's call it Sunset Strip during the daytime, when Motley Crue, Rat, and Guns N' Roses are passed out drunk from the night before. Full of catchy tracks, unbelievable hooks, solid leads, great vocals, well produced, and definitely a notch above most of the recycled hair metal garbage that was being pumped down our throats and onto shelves at the time. An excellent album. Check out Trouble in Paradise, which was a huge hit from this album and should be easy to find on YouTube. And then check out the rest of the album, because you'll dig it. And that's it, y'all. That's another Baker's Dozen that have either just found their way through the door or just found their way off the shelf. But all of them have been spending some serious time on the turntable, and I couldn't wait to show them. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have one. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.